Yep.
Excellent. I'll give a couple more people a chance to come on in, but welcome everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful summer and a wonderful summer institute. My name is Brad Haskamp. I am the State Director of Adult Education, and we have a wonderful team in our adult education team here at the Minnesota Department of Education. Today, we're going to share with you our 2024 Minnesota Adult Education Trends and Issues. So we look forward to talking more with you today about that. So how we're going to break today's conversation down. First, we're going to talk through some introductions, provide an overview of who is here to support your work, what resources are here to support your work. And so that includes our adult education team at the Minnesota Department of Education. We'll talk about our who we are and what our roles are. We also have some professional development resources, and we want to share the members of our adult education support provider, or goodness gracious, our adult education support network providers. In addition to that, we're going to talk through the numbers. How did we do over this past year? And we'll talk about current trends and issues in our Minnesota adult education field. So quite a packed agenda today. Just note that if you have any questions to clarify the content on the slides, please raise them in the chat. But because we have such a packed agenda, we won't be able to address other questions, but you can always contact us directly if you have any questions. And you can email us or call us if you have any questions. So let's launch right into it by introducing the team members in our adult education team at the Minnesota Department of Education. We are a team of 7 that work specifically with adult education, and I'll give each of us a chance to introduce ourselves. I'm going to start us off. My name is Brad Haskamp. My role is Team Supervisor or State Adult Education Director. My pronouns are he, him, his. You see my email there. Things that you could ask me about include kind of just overview of the system, adult education policy, and accountability issues. I've been working as part of the state team since 2010, but I've been in this role since 2020. And for this summer for me has been a summer of exploring new things. In particular, I have a couple of new kayaks, and I've been going around portaging over beaver dams and just having little fun adventures that way. Good to see you all. I will turn it over to the next person.
Thanks, Brad. Hi, everybody. I'm Astrid Leiden, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm the professional development specialist on our team, and you can contact me with any questions regarding professional development, whether it's professional development opportunities or the design and delivery of professional development at your local programs, or any questions about our support network providers and who to contact for what. I'll be going over that in just a minute. I've been with our team since 2006. And one of the things that I love to do in my free time is explore our amazing Minnesota state parks. I love hiking and camping with my family and my pup Joey here. And a couple of weeks ago, I celebrated my birthday at Scenic State Park. Unfortunately, it was full of bugs and rained a lot, so we spent a lot of time in the tent, but it was a gorgeous park, and I hope to go back soon. I'll turn it over to the next person.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brandy Logan, and my role here with the team is High School Equivalency and Accountability Specialist. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Of course, you can reach me always at that email and ask me about anything that's high school equivalency services. That's going to be GED and HiSET now that we're a 2-test state. And your accountability measures, those are NRS reports that we submit to the federal team and publications, as well as narrative assistance and any other accountability. I've been with MDE since 2022, so a little over 2 years. It feels just like yesterday. And a little bit about me is I learned that if there's ever a zombie apocalypse, I can walk 50 miles a week, because on my vacation to Scotland, my watch was clocking my steps, and I surprised myself.
And unmute, that's important. Hi, everybody. I'm Haley Swanson. My role at MDE is Records, Grants, and Admin Support Specialist. My pronouns are she, her. You can see my email on the screen there. things that you can ask me about are anything related to ABE grants and high school equivalency records as well. And I have been at MDE since 2023, and I just celebrated my 1-year anniversary in July, so that's pretty exciting. And I agree with Brandy, it feels like yesterday, but my summer, I've been trying to prioritize having a restful summer. It's been a pretty jam-packed year, so that my summer has been just pretty much R&R.
Hello, everybody. Good to see you. I'm Jody Versat. I'm the program quality specialist on our team. My pronouns are she, her. Some things you can ask me about are the annual application and the tables, 5-year narratives, and also standard adult diploma, which you can also ask my colleague Brandy about. I've been on this team since 2016. I used to be like the most recent member, but now I'm kind of one of the ones in the middle. And one highlight of my summer is that I have a bush in my backyard that before this summer I just thought was a bush. And this year, because I think all of the rain and sun and everything, I learned it was a mulberry bush. So I've been making a few things from mulberries this summer.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Julie Dinkle, and I'm the transition specialist at the Department of Education, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. You can ask me about the Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education Grant, our Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act partnerships and guidance, and then anything related to transitions to employment, post-secondary, or training. I've been at MDE since 2010. And this summer, I have been spending countless hours agate hunting. As you can see, I love the Lake Superior agate. I think it's gorgeous. No, I did not find the one in the photo, but that is what I'm searching for.
Hello, folks. My name's Neil Allard. My role is Records Communications and Administrative Support. Title Records Communications and Administrative Support Specialist. Sorry, I'm here. My pronouns are they, them. My email is on the screen. To email me at this email address, you can contact me about contact list changes or any questions about who else to contact if you're not sure who to talk to. I've been at MDE since 2021, and I've included a picture of my cat Pip, who loves to contribute to meetings and calls when she isn't otherwise occupied. She's napping right now, so important business elsewhere to contribute. And this next one, I want to get Haley to turn on her camera again too. So Haley mentioned about records. Do not email Haley directly. Do not email me directly. Please email the shared ABE inbox. It helps us share our work better and be focused, and make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. That email address is mde.abe@state.mn.us. Anything HSE, GED, HiSET, records requests, verifications, age waivers, anything else that you need, please email the shared inbox rather than us individually. That helps us out a lot and helps you out a lot. Turnaround time can be up to 5 to 7 business days, but we're generally much quicker than that. But we give ourselves that as trying to keep it realistic and to help keep us sane. Anything else to contribute, Haley? Did I cover everything? We got it. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Excellent. So that is our team here at Minnesota Adult Education at the Minnesota Department of Education. And we know that many of you are also new. So if you are new to the adult education field, if you have a new role in adult education, congratulations and welcome. Adult education is such an amazing field, and everyone gets to demonstrate some leadership and gets to work directly to make a difference in our communities and in Minnesota. If you are new, Or if you have a new position, please let us know in the chat. Introduce yourself in the chat with your name and your new role in your program. Please share. We'd love to get to know you, and we hope to get to know you and work with you more throughout the year. So just take a moment here to give you a chance to introduce yourself in the chat. Again, your name, your role in your program if you're new. Excellent. It's great to see some new folks in the field. See some of you from Waseca and Austin, the Department of Corrections. Excellent. Ooh, now it's moving so fast, I can't even keep up. Welcome. Welcome to adult education. We're so glad you're here. At this point, I'm going to turn things over to Astrid to talk a little bit about our Minnesota Adult Education Professional Development Resources. Astrid.
Great, thank you, Brad. So Summer Institute is an excellent way to kick off our school year, and we have a lot more planned for you in the coming year. So we've put together some resources here to help you navigate the professional development offerings that are available and to plan your professional development for the upcoming year. So you have 4 different documents here, or resources. Neil's going to put those links in the chat, and you'll also be able to access them via the slides in the SCED app later. But the FYPD overview, Brad, if you want to quickly go to that one, this is a snapshot of all of the events and cohorts that are planned for the year. And when you go to this resource, you'll see that you can move from page to page. We've got the events for the year. And then if you go a little bit further, you'll see the cohorts that are available through the year, as well as links to find out more. So that's your document to find out what's being planned for this particular year. We go back to the slides. You also have a link to our professional development catalog. This is a searchable database of all PD offerings. So you can look for online courses, you can look for cohorts, whatever it is you're looking for. Linked from that page is a spreadsheet of all of the dates for events that have been planned to date. So if you want that in a one-shot resource. And then, of course, the events calendar link from the Atlas website is the place to register for professional development that's already been scheduled. So as Brad mentioned, you've met the state adult education team. We're all here to support you, but so is our support network. So let's go to that next slide. Minnesota is very fortunate in that we've got significant state funding that funds adult education supplemental service grants that are designed to support the field as a whole. They're there to support practitioners and programs all around the state. And we have a new set of grantees and support network providers that have been awarded for another 3-year grant cycle. So we're going to take a couple minutes here to make sure that you know what resources are available through this network and who to contact for what. And we're going to do it in a little bit of a quiz fashion. So let's go to the next slide, Brad, and test your knowledge. So where can you go to get training on CASAS and TABE assessments, or to learn more about the annual Support Services Conference? Invite you to put your thoughts in the chat. Who can you contact? Seeing a couple different responses coming in. Yes, so the Southwest ABE is the place to go. Marty and Linda, yes, they are our point people for all things assessment. You can find on this website information about how to get connected to training, as well as information about the Support Services Conference. So again, the mnabeassessment.com website, Marty Olson and Linda Keller are the leads. Next question, digital learning and technology services. If you want to find out what approved distance learning platforms are available in Minnesota, or get information about distance learning and technology training, learn more about the teacher verification model, or if you want to submit an application to have a distance learning platform or course approved for proxy hours, who are you going to contact? Seeing lots of folks saying Literacy Minnesota. Yes, Susan Wettenkamp Brandt. is the lead on that project. Yes, so you'll go to the distance learning section of the Literacy Minnesota website, and on that website you can find a link to their support email for any questions related to these topics. Let's go to the next slide, Brad. Okay, if you want to find some more information about how you can better serve your learners with disabilities, or find out more about the Universal Design for Learning, how to implement that in your program, find out resources and training on supporting student mental health, or if you want to borrow some adaptive technology for students with disabilities, who are you going to contact? Yes, Panda is the correct answer, and Wendy Sweeney is the lead on that grant. Lots of amazing resources on this website, a whole disabilities interactive handbook, as well as contact information for Panda. So I encourage you to get in touch. Go to the next slide, Brad. So where can you access training on all different kinds of topics and resource libraries around reading, math, ESL, career pathways, content standards, program administration? Where are you going to go? Yes, Atlas. Atlas is the place to go. Lots of amazing workshops, webinars, cohorts focused on these areas, and comprehensive resource libraries. So make sure to check out everything that website and their team has to offer. Okay, hopefully you're all going to get this one right. So where can you learn more about Summer Institute? Access marketing materials for your programs and an outreach toolkit with great photos of learners from all around Minnesota, and get involved with Minnesota's adult education professional organization. Yes, the answer is the Literacy Action Network. Go to their website and find lots of ways to get involved, both with their supplemental service support network activities and the other great things that they do as part of their organization. What if you want to access training for your volunteers or find volunteers to support your program? Or maybe you're new to using volunteers and you want some ideas for how to utilize volunteers or manage a volunteer program, or access the Adult Literacy Hotline, our statewide database of Minnesota adult education programs. Yes, Literacy Minnesota. So Literacy Minnesota also provides comprehensive support around volunteer programming as well as outreach services for the field. So this is the organization that hosts our Adult Literacy Hotline, and where you can request information to promote that hotline in your area. Then last but not least, where can you learn more about equity efforts in Minnesota adult education and how to get involved in a statewide racial equity community of practice? So it's one of our newer grants, maybe less familiar to folks. But what is the organization that is hosting these activities? Yes, Stacy, Southwest ABE. This is the second round of this grant that Southwest ABE is managing, and they've been doing some amazing work over the past 3 years to conduct an equity analysis of our system, comprehensive learner, educator, and administrator surveys. And they are now entering a next phase of the work, which is a statewide racial equity community of practice. So let's go to the next slide. They are in the midst of recruiting folks to get involved. So this community of practice will work together to build their own understanding of DEI by going through the Links DEI course. They'll be reviewing state adult education data, policies, and practices with a racial equity lens. We'll be working to identify tools and resources that can be used out in programs and at the state level, and then making recommendations around professional development to support DEI work. So Neil has put the link to the application for that community of practice in the chat. The deadline to apply is next Friday, August 23rd. And I hope that you'll all consider participating in these efforts. They're looking for wide representation of different roles in adult education, as well as different types of programs and areas of the state. So that's a great way to get involved. So for any of these, to learn about any of these support network providers, you can follow the links on this website or go to the professional development catalog. And I hope that you will tap into these amazing resources that are available to you. So I'm going to turn it over to Jody to walk through the numbers.
All right, thank you, Astrid. So I'm going to take some time, since this is kind of the biggest convening we have of adult education practitioners across our state. I'm just going to highlight and go over some of the numbers and some of the data about our statewide system. So to start with, I just want to talk about geography a little bit. So we have an adult education system in the state of Minnesota that covers all of our entire state, geographically speaking. Across the state, we have 39 adult education consortia, or sometimes our MDE team will refer to those as grantees. So those are organizations that receive money directly from MDE in order to provide adult education services. We know that many of you work in consortia that are partnerships. You have multiple members, you have multiple providers. So within your consortia, you may have other organizations besides that single fiscal agent grantee who are also receiving state or federal adult education funding. So we have across the state approximately 100 different organizations that employ adult ed teachers and provide adult education services. So a lot of those are school districts, but there are also other kinds of organizations like nonprofit organizations, correctional institutions, and several of our tribal nations in the state of Minnesota. So those approximately 100 organizations are delivering adult ed classes and services at about 300 locations across the state. And those are happening in many different kinds of buildings, school buildings, libraries, prisons and jails, workforce centers, college campuses, different employers. So many different kinds of locations across the state are hosting adult ed classes. And in addition, there are also many adult ed services that are being offered online and in the online space. So that's kind of an overview of what the geography of our system and the numbers of folks that are working to provide services. So I want to talk a little bit about this past year and give you some information and some data about our services across the state in the last year. So for program year 23-24, that's kind of the school year, the year that just ended as of the end of June of 24. So in that period of time, across our statewide adult education system here in Minnesota, we served 56,324 students. So shout out to all of you across the state for serving an impressive number of people over the last year. And just for some comparison, there's some numbers from earlier years there. So I want to first kind of call your attention to comparing what we're doing now to our old normal, which was pre-pandemic. So the last full program year that was before the pandemic was 18-19. And in that year, we served about 54,000 people. Then in 1920 and 2021, I don't have those numbers here on this slide just to keep it a little bit more limited, but there was a big dip in services. We all remember that. We all know what happened. We all know why. For the last 3 years, as you can see, starting in 21 and then 22 and then 23-24, we have been gradually increasing the number of students that we have been serving. And interestingly, this past program year, we served more students across our state in our statewide system than we did in the year immediately before the pandemic. So I think that's just a really important note and a highlight. And to help us see kind of some full circle of it, we had definitely some years that felt very tumultuous and very uncertain, but we are now getting back to what's probably a new normal, but it doesn't look too different than the old normal at this point. So the other, also on this slide is information about contact hours. So in this program year, those 56,000 students put in a total of about 3.9 million contact hours. So again, there's some comparison numbers there. You will notice that in that 18-19 year, so before the pandemic, contact hours for that year were about 4.4 million. And then 1920 and 2021, there was a big dip. And then again, these last 3 years, we have been steadily increasing and growing. So interestingly, even though we have, in terms of the number of students we're serving, we've sort of come back to our old normal. Contact hours are not yet at the level that they were before the pandemic. But I think you can see if you sort of follow the trend line that it's likely that we will be back to that total of hours within the next year or two, potentially. So I think it is an interesting moment to reflect on everything that's happened in our field across our state in this very, tumultuous time of the pandemic, and just to note that we are really coming back towards a new normal here. Here's another visual representation of what's been happening specifically with contact hours. So you just kind of get a comparison sense. A few different things to note in this chart. We've got hours on the left side, and then these are broken down by month. This is organized from May to April because that is the contact hour reporting period. That's sort of the year's worth of hours that you report to our office that we use to calculate funding for the next year. So one thing that I think this visual makes very clear is that we can see consistently across 4 years of data that are represented here that there are definitely lower times and higher times in terms of monthly hours. And I don't think that's surprising, where hours are lower in the summer, hours are highest in the fall, and then another little dip around December. So I think all of that makes sense. January through April feels a little bit more changeable. And then when you compare these different years to each other, just note that blue line that's our old normal. So that's the 18-19 year that was before COVID. If I had 1920 and 2021 on here, they would be below that orange line, basically, or at least 2021 would definitely be the lowest. So you can see when you look orange, green, black, that those lines are consistently growing in terms of number of hours year over year. So that black line represents this past year, 23-24. As you can see, we're getting close to the blue line. And interestingly, I think it is really interesting to note that in January and February of 2024, you'll see that black line actually crosses and goes above the blue line. So what that means is for a couple of months of this past year, we actually did, students in our programs were generating more contact hours than in that same period in 2019. So again, I think it's more evidence that we are kind of normalizing again and getting back to the levels of service that we are used to before the pandemic. Then I wanted to talk a bit about funding. Again, when we think about when we take a look at the amount of funding that funds our system statewide, for this current year, so the upcoming year, actually the year that we are in right now, the fiscal year that started on July 1st of this year, for this current year, we have about 54 million in state funding, and we have about 6 million in federal funding. What that means, if you do the math quick, is that we have about 60 million, a little over 60 million to fund our statewide system. This is the first time in the first year that we have hit that 60 million mark. If you look back at 23-24 and 22-23, you can see that we have each year, there's been a little bit of an increase in both the state funding and the federal funding. I want to give a really big shout out here to Literacy Action Network, to LAN, and specifically the Legislative Committee, who worked with the lobbyists. There was some really productive advocacy work at the state legislature last year that resulted in a change in state statute that means that this kind of an increase that you see represented here is now actually written into our state law. So moving forward, as long as K-12 in general gets a little bit of an increase, adult ed will also grow a little, which is great news because in the past, there had been years where our funding remains essentially level, which we know is a problem because we know your costs out there in running your programs are not level, right? Costs go up every year. So we are super grateful to the advocacy work of LAN for helping to make sure that we continue to grow our funding enough to keep up with those cost increases. Now, I will also say there is more advocacy work that is underway. The Legislative Committee has a new platform this year. And definitely there is room for additional funding and additional resources for our programs. We all can see how that could be used. So I do encourage you to get involved with those folks if you'd like to have kind of a voice in those conversations. And then last thing I want to share with you today is about contact hour rates. So when you look at the whole big pot of funding that goes for a whole statewide system, about $60 million this year, that 60 million gets divided up and distributed out to the different consortia and the different providers. The way that happens is through a funding formula that is defined in state statute. It's kind of complicated. It has multiple steps and some caps and some limits. We're not going to get into that today, but we want you to know, probably you've heard of this before, that the most important part of that funding formula, the biggest piece of the funding and the way we distribute funding is about contact hours. So for this current year, for your funding that your consortium, your program is getting for the current year, every hour, every contact hour from last year is worth $9.60 in state funding and $9.60 in state funding and 93 cents in federal funding. Those amounts do vary every year. It depends on the size of the entire pot that we have and the number of contact hours across the state. But those are the rates for this year's funding. But sort of a last thought about that is that we do not want to suggest that contact hours are the only reason that you are delivering services, right? We believe that you are providing services to your students in your communities in order to support their success in their goals and their next steps. And we believe that contact hours are something that sort of comes along with those practices. So we always encourage you to plan programming not just for the amount of contact hours, but also for the goal of supporting students in their success. So those are some numbers for you. And then I'm going to hand it back to Brad.
Thank you so much, Jody. Very important numbers, and thank you for walking through those and clearly explaining them. I really appreciate that. And I will say the chat is very rich in conversation as well around this topic. So wonderful. At this point, I'd invite my colleague Kaya to come on camera as well. So Kaya and I are going to talk a little bit about what we see as current trends and issues in Minnesota adult education. And the reason I'm asking Kaya is the president of Literacy Action Network, and Literacy Action Network is the member organization for adult education here in Minnesota. So if you were to think that there are two kind of state entities, MDE is one. We deal with the grants and everything and the policies, and Literacy Action Network is the other, because it truly is the member organization, the professional organization for the field of adult education here. Kaya, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Brad. My name is Kaya. As was mentioned, I'm president of the board for the Literacy Action Network. I'm also a teacher at the International Institute. And I'm excited to talk about some of these topics today. And I know people are already really active in the chat. And I think Brad and I are hoping that you continue to weigh in as we discuss these different topics, because we are hoping to get a sense of what you think about these things and how you're reacting to the perspectives that we're hearing.
Absolutely. And we do hope to create this as a bit of conversation. So we really want to see what you have to say in the chat as well. So as Kaya and I sat down and really looked at and talked about what we're seeing, we found a variety of areas. And the first area that we saw as kind of a current trend and issue, and this is not, unique to this year, right? But we see programs really focusing, how do I create a healthy team? How do I create a healthy program? How do we create a healthy system? And so this really looks at multiple levels, like from the individual level all the way to the organizational level, classroom level, state level. We really are we're seeing what is the culture of our system? What is the culture of our programs that we're bringing? How inclusive are we to serve our communities? Also, Kyle, you were talking about how it's so important to acknowledge our strengths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we were talking about the fact that during, I think, those tough years during 2020 and COVID, a lot of ABE programs sort of took themselves apart and put themselves back together to address the changing landscape. And I think what's really cool to see right now is I think a lot of us are in positions where we've gotten through that reactive stage and are now able to assess what's really working and how you can leverage that to blend what was good before the pandemic with all of the tools that we have after it. And I think that that's showing a lot in the ways that we're able to collaborate, and also the ways that we're able to innovate and sustain those innovations. And if anyone has things in their programs that they're seeing that maybe came out of those situations that you want to shout out, please put them in the chat. Because I know that there are things that have really changed how we deliver adult education.
Absolutely. And as part of that, at that restructuring, we did so much rapid growth and change, and that I think also we're taking a step back to acknowledge how exhausted we all have been, and really think about what do we sustain and how do we sustain that, I think has been a big topic as well, because there's been a lot of burnout within our field. We've had a lot of conversations about the mental health, and I think it's important to think about, yes, we need to continuously grow and adapt, but we also need to make sure that we're sustaining ourselves, that we're doing what we can to be healthy about our growth.
Yeah. And I think I know for Elan, that's always been sort of a long-term goal, and what we're advocating for is to make adult education a sustainable field for people financially, professionally, and also emotionally. Because it is tough when you're working in small niche fields. And like you said, Brett, a lot of people wear a lot of hats and have had to extend in order to address issues. And we want to make sure that as we're moving forward, we're thinking about whether all of those extensions are things that are sustainable for people.
Absolutely. Like HighFlex, you mentioned HighFlex. HighFlex is great for the learners, right? You can meet learners where they are, whether they need to stay home that day or attend class virtually from some other location, or whether they're able to come in. And that's a big ask as an individual staff person or as an individual teacher. And how can you do that in a sustainable way, both for the staffing and based on the resources that we have available? I think that's been a really tough question at times.
Yeah, well, and I always say with HighFlex, you're actually planning for 2 classes. So you've got a teacher who is ostensibly teaching 1 class, but I think you are responsible for 2. and like making sure that, especially in high flex models, instructors have the support they need for that like scope of planning is important.
Absolutely. Yeah, in addition to the models, also just incorporating a variety of skills. Like, I see classes that aren't just teaching like GED prep, but they're building in the ACEs TIF, or that transitions integration framework, those skills, those employability skills, or whole life skills that folks need, or that folks that would apply for no matter what your future pathway is. And also we're looking at digital literacy is more and more essential for what we need to do in our day-to-day lives. And so building that in, incorporating that, like tying all three, like the academic, the whole life skills, and the digital literacy skills all together are so important. And we're never just doing one thing in adult education, right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
And I also appreciate the contextualized, like seeing classes like Jody was talking about in a variety of settings. So if employees can participate at their work site and it's integrating with the employer, and that might actually help them get a promotion, like that's exciting to see that type of programming evolve too.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people that have historically had great partnerships with workplaces and higher education sites, and I know that those are continuing to develop. And again, I'll call out to all of you listening and in the chat if you want to shout out some of the partners that you've had or the collaboration you've been able to do. I know that it's useful for me to hear about how other programs are able to make those connections. And I think that the other thing that I was thinking about with building in that digital literacy and contextualizing is I want to shout out to some of the programs, especially in Greater Minnesota, that have done such a good job collaborating around what their online programming looks like, so that it's not just like individual programs recreating the online wheel, but connecting with each other so that you've got a giant resource bank for people to join. I think up in northern Minnesota especially, they're doing a great job of that.
Absolutely. And I see some great additional recommendations in the chat that are helpful in building on that as well. Just talking about the importance of the equity work that has been happening locally and then statewide, emphasis on social emotional learning. Multitasking is we're constantly expected at this point to be multitasking, whether we want to or not.
Yes.
And just acknowledging that over the last couple of years, we've acknowledged that, we've always acknowledged that learners have a full life. Everyone has a full life. And sometimes there is a big focus. You need to refocus on family issues, community issues, other personal issues, and that can really affect learning as well. And thinking about how can we best support that, or acknowledge that as well. Yeah, stop, like you say, stopping out instead of dropping out. Yeah, and I see some great additional items here. Let's dive a little bit more about the teaching and the staff aspect, Kaya. So this has been another major issue is teacher recruitment, staff recruitment, teacher and staff retention. And I know at the Department of Education, we get a lot of programs that are trying to hire teachers, especially in school districts. And you're trying to find teachers that have the appropriate licensure and really struggling and trying to think about how to get someone started in that licensure process. Or what if if you've been on a tier 1 license and they can't re-up it one more time. They need to advance a tier in order to continue. That has been a big struggle that we've seen, or a big challenge that we've seen across the state. And then also just fair pay and teacher contracts. It's been a problem within our system that people cannot have a sustainable wage and work in adult education in some cases. And I love that we're seeing growth in this area and that we really are talking about fair pay a little bit more. And that's great. And at the same time, we'll talk about this a little bit more, but we also need the budgets in order to accommodate that as well. And I think that's been such an important area here. What are you seeing, Kaya, with this?
I would agree with that. I think we've been on an ongoing journey to professionalize the field, which is ultimately to our benefit. I think Minnesota has some of the best opportunities for people across the United States to really build a career in adult education and to get the educational credentialing that backs that up. But I think we're gonna see the need for this kind of continuing to expand. As you know, people still need to be able to get those licenses, and as programs require that more, that means that more people need to be able to enroll, and Hamlin does a good job with their programs there. But it'll be interesting to see if we can expand it. I also think, and we talked about this with teacher contracts, again, this is top of mind in the advocacy work that LAN does. We've had in the previous legislative session some great progress around how districts can choose to define adult education teachers within their programs, which has opened the door to greater pay equity. And now we need to make sure that we are backing that with the actual money to do it, because it's great to say how much we should pay teachers, and if we don't get that money in order to do it, then nobody can build their programs that way. So hopefully we're going to be able to continue as we grow the field and grow the professionalism, also grow the funding for it.
Yeah, and Kaya, also it's important to know that with these changes in statute that brought a lot of adult ed teachers into the school district teacher contracts, that's been great. That hopefully can be a great way to make sure that there is pay equity or fair pay for teachers. Again, it's like getting the money to back that up too. And though we need to acknowledge that we have a lot of organizations that aren't school districts hiring adult ed teachers, and this statute doesn't necessarily apply to them. And so that's another area that we need to think about in terms of thinking about a fair statewide system and field.
Yeah, and I do want to just highlight, there was a survey that went out from LAN a few months back that was about how programs are funding themselves. And if you participated in that, we really want to say thank you for doing that. And if you're interested in seeing the results of the survey, you can check them out on the LAN website. I think it's a snapshot of a moment for programs, but I also think it's just interesting to see how programs are using their funds and what they're able to do with them.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kaya, for bringing that up. And that connects into our next item about how do eligible learners connect to the resources they need, connect to the programming that they need. And I know on our end, that Minnesota Adult Literacy Hotline that Literacy Minnesota runs as part of their supplemental service work or as part of an adult education support network provider, that is essential. We have lots of people using that hotline every day, whether it's online, calling, or texting the hotline to find the programming of the resources, the adult education services for them. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But also, Kaya, we were just in a meeting recently where the issue about high school equivalency testing in greater Minnesota came up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that can be a real contrast among the diversity of programs that we have is that we can have like areas in the Twin Cities metro where we've got wait lists for programs, and then when we have spaces out in greater Minnesota where it's hard for people to get to the programs that they serve or to access things. And so things for like GED and HiSET testing, for example, those testing centers aren't easy for people to reach. And if they're in a really rural area, they may have to drive or find someone to drive them a long distance. And then we also know that there are issues with people having the internet access to do the remote testing options as well. And that's something that we've had conversations about, but we'd love to hear more if you're experiencing those things. You can reach out to any of us at LAN or also at MDE. Our legislative team in particular, I know, is interested in collecting some of the stories of that so that we can highlight that problem and also brainstorm some of the solutions to trying to help get people connected who might not be living close to testing centers.
Absolutely. And also you talk about kind of the differences statewide. We also see a big variety in terms of which programs have wait lists and really can't serve anyone else. And then other programs are just saying anyone can come in today and we can serve them. There's been a big, no one program is the same.
Yeah, and that's something too where I'd love if we can collaborate a little bit more across programs for that, because whenever I hear someone's got a wait list at their program, especially if it's a wait list for an online class, it like breaks my heart a little bit, because I know that we have the ability to spread those things out. And I know that contact hours are always top of mind for people, but also, as Jody acknowledged, the whole point is to make sure people get connected. And I feel like something that I would love to see us get better at doing is getting at least our online programming referrals in such a place that nobody's ever waiting to get into an online class.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, and definitely we need further conversations on this. I want to talk a little bit more about the hotline, and this is kind of a challenge to everyone in the field. Please go after the session and check out the hotline. Check out and see, is your site's information correct in terms of contact information, in terms of what classes are being offered, when those classes are being offered, how those classes are titled? Is that what you want people in the public to see? Check out how your program looks in the hotline. And if it's not looking accurate, please make some changes in SID, in our state adult education database, to make that accurate, or to let your staff know that do oversee the database work. Let them know what might need to be updated, because like I said, there are lots of people using this hotline every day to refer people to programs, to refer potential learners. And so we want to make sure that the way to make that information up to date is in SID. SID feeds the hotline with information. You might not know this, but the SID, your data that you put in SID in terms of classes and contact information, also populates Career Force and many of our partner programs as well. So that information does get utilized quite a bit.
Yeah.
So the final issue that I want that we are going to discuss today, and a lot of these other issues tap into this, but it's really that we're just acknowledging that more and more programs are requesting, saying we need increased resources in order to do our work well.
Yeah. And I think that you've got a good list of what some of those things are. I want to echo also what came up in Jody's conversation, that to me, at least, funding is like the top of the solutions to these things, and funding across the board. We've used this analogy a lot, but I think it's a good one to remind people of, that especially the state funding is like a pizza that you divide up. And so the bigger our pizza, the larger the pieces we can give different programs. And so making sure that we're continuing to push for that from our legislature is really important. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so you'll see more from MDE and more from Literacy Action Network on these issues as we do events, as we develop, as LAN develops our platform, as we get together in the fall manager meeting, during our web chats. So this is a start of more conversations to come. Kaya, thank you so much for being here with me today. I really appreciate being able to talk together about what we're seeing in the field and hearing from folks in the chat at the same time, like what they're seeing. That's so important.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for giving me the chance to talk as well, Brad. And also thank you to everyone who has contributed your ideas. And I hope that we can continue some of these conversations, like I mentioned, in the LAN meeting tomorrow. And then if you are interested in being a part of the Literacy Action Network's work with this stuff too, we'd love to have more voices at the table. So thank you.
Thank you. As we close, one other thing I wanted to share today is a reminder of why we do what we do. When we talk about increased system resources, the reason is in order to serve our communities, more importantly, to serve the learners in our programs. And I think I'd really like to share some of the stories that have been shared with us. The stories I'm going to share with you today come from our adult education programs that submitted narratives, that went through their narrative process. And we read through every story that was submitted. And I want to highlight some of these stories. One story from each program today, or from each consortium. First, I'm going to start off with NERI and ASIO. NERI started in 2018 at ASIO Adult Education. Prior to that, NERI had only attended up to elementary school in Guatemala. And so NERI enrolled in English classes and then advanced to GED classes. He earned his high school equivalency diploma in 2022. And since then, he has really dove into volunteering with Osseo ABE. So going from student to volunteer and sharing his story with other students to help support their learning. He's been a strong advocate and supporter of the program and in the community. And also he started like, we work on word of mouth. He's been bringing folks in, his brother and his brother's girlfriend into the program to enroll. So it just shows that cycle of adult education and why we do what we do and how that continues into the future, even after that person stops being a learner. In Northwest Minnesota, I want to share a little bit about Rosie. Rosie was a certified nursing assistant in Roseau when she came to adult education, and she worked her way through, earned her high school equivalency diploma, and then enrolled in Northland Community and Technical College, and then joining adult education to get just-in-time reading and math support as she was enrolled at the Northland College. And she enrolled in the TEAS prep class through the Regional Online Career Collaborative, those regional online training classes that are offered. And with that, Rosie was able to pass the TEAS exam and was accepted into the nursing program. And now this year has graduated with a licensed practical nursing diploma. So exciting to see that growth and to see that work and to see the lifeline that students persist in multiple aspects of our program. In another part of northern Minnesota, we have Katrina, another student that reflects some of the work that we do. Katrina was homeschooled but didn't receive a diploma. And so she came to the AEOA program in northeastern Minnesota, and her goal was to earn that diploma and then maybe go on to college. And so she passed 3 of the 4 tests, the GED tests, and then really got some additional support and help with the math work. And now not only has she earned her diploma, but she's now enrolled in college that very next month and is working her way, like she's even thinking, okay, maybe now I'm going to go for my bachelor's here. So it's exciting to see that work or that those goals continue and persist. Aitana with Dakota Prairie. Aitana reminds us that many of our learners come to us with trauma. And we need to be really reflective. We need to remind ourselves of that. And many of you see that each and every day. Aitana did not utter a word in new situations or when around new people when she first came to the program. And her ABE teacher worked hard to create a safe environment for Aitana and really created some scaffolded activities like, okay, first work alone. Now you're going to work with your teacher. Now you're going to work with maybe one other student that you can trust, and kind of really helped create those scaffolded activities, which helped her blossom. And Aitana started to learn like, oh, I know more than I realized I knew. And not only is she starting to blossom, has she blossomed, but she now is working as a teaching assistant in special education and working specifically with students who do not speak. Talk about just coming full circle. It's so important and exciting and meaningful to see that work in action and to see where those students go and what they do. And now in South Suburban adult education, we have Mateo. He dropped out of school at age 17 to help support his family, so he went to work. He's worked in construction for about 20 years. And then he had surgery and was not able to work. So he enrolled in GED classes. And then not only has he been working towards his GED, but he's earned North Star digital literacy certificates to build his skills and showcase his skills in digital literacy and his digital skills. He passed his first GED test in January here, and his goal is to continue to persist on and earn that high school equivalency diploma this year. And next, I want to share Lupe's story. Lupe reminds us about some of the growth that we have in our system, and that this growth can look in a variety of different ways. Lupe came to the program to learn English and become a nurse again. She's been regularly attending Lakeville schools, Her husband's in the military and she recently gave birth to her second son. And she said, thanks to the English classes, I was able to communicate with the doctors and the nurses on the day of my delivery. My husband could not be with me at the time, and he was always the one who translated most of our conversations for me. But that day and on my last appointments, I was able to do it alone. Thank you for all your help and for contributing to that grain of sand so that people can learn other languages. That is so important to note and acknowledge the growth that we see with our learners. And finally, in Burnsville, I want to spotlight Shuai Shang, who had a variety of met so many different things. Advanced levels, earned a paraprofessional certification, passed multiple GED tests, passed multiple North Star digital literacy tests, and has also been a student representative to the showcasing adult education to the school board. He is now also hired as an adult education administrative assistant, and he's received his green card. I mean, just talk about so many accomplishments with our individuals in our adult education programs. So thank you for sharing those stories. I know you have many other stories that you could share in the chat, but thank you for all the work that you do, and we look forward to working with you to help students succeed every day. As we close out today, just please share in the chat, what are you most excited about? What are you most excited about in this upcoming year? Please share as we're closing in the chat. Thank you all so much. I look forward to working with you. I hope you continue to have a wonderful Summer Institute, and we'll see you in the rest of the sessions. But again, before you close, your exit ticket is to share, what are you most excited about this year? Thank you all. I think we can end the recording. Andy, anything else before we sign out?